For a deeper discussion about Iran's strike on Israel and how it could be shaping China's military preparedness for a possible move against Taiwan, we sat down with Tommy Wooler. He's the president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy. Tommy Wooler, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tiffany.
Given this Iran attack over the weekend where 99% of the missiles and drones were intercepted, how do you see China viewing this, especially in terms of a potential invasion of Taiwan?
So I think when you look at the two scenarios, right? So you have Iran launching hundreds of munitions, and then you have the prospect of China doing the same in a conflict over Taiwan. So there are some significant differences, which is that in the Middle East, there are allies of Israel that are in close proximity, which assisted with that. You had, of course, a lot of the munitions, the Iranian munitions that failed. China is going to be much more proficient in terms of its ballistic missile technology. But there's also just the basic physics and the time space, right? It's about a 10 times difference in terms of the gap between mainland China and Taiwan and the landmass of Iran and Israel. You're looking at about 100 versus 1,000 miles. And so that's flight times, right? And that allows ballistic missile defense systems and air forces and allies the opportunity to work. You don't have that when it comes to the scenario between China and Taiwan. And lastly, I'll just say, Tiffany, one thing Iran doesn't have, as far as we know, but we know that China does, is hypersonic technology, right? So when you look at that time space, they can make it even much faster. These are all considerations that both China and Taiwan need to be looking at, and of course, all of Taiwan's allies.
Now, multiple reports are noting that Chinese companies have been linked as suppliers for Iran's drones and drone systems. Now, how might that play into a potential Iran response to Israel if we do see this escalate?
Well, let's look at Blinken inviting China to be part of this whole process of again, appeasement. And so that means China's not held accountable for what you just mentioned, Tiffany, the fact that they're the ones creating much of the technology that Iran's using to attack Israel. But let's step back even further and look at our own country. How many law enforcement organizations throughout this country are using DJI drone technology or other Chinese manufacturers to do their job? How many critical infrastructure owners are using that technology? So we might think for a second, well, the war is over there in the Middle East, right? And that these Chinese tech are being used by Iran. No, they're being used by our own country's law enforcement, critical infrastructure. And Tiffany, this is something that we're working right now at the state level in houses of representatives and senates across the country to help wake up lawmakers at the state level. Because at the federal level, really, unfortunately, this administration has just been completely just ignored that threat. And so where we can, we're trying to wake people up, even at the state and local level, to the same kind of threat that Israel might expect from China and Iran, we can expect here on the home turf from those same adversaries.